Let me tell you about the day everything went sideways in the Galactic Council. My name is Ambassador Krill Knox, and I represent the Zentaran Coalition. Well, represented things are a bit complicated now. You see, I was there when humanity decided they had enough of our, shall we say, particular way of doing things. Order. Order in the Council. High Counselor Mira Voss banged her ceremonial gravity hammer against the quantum-stabilized podium. The sound echoed through the massive chamber, bouncing off the walls of the station's 7 meeting hall. Her purple scales flickered with frustration as she tried to maintain control over the chaos erupting around us. I sat there watching the pandemonium unfold, my sensory tentacles curled in amusement. The other representatives were losing their minds, some literally, as the hive mind collective of Beta Centauri had accidentally disconnected 3 of their neural nodes in the confusion. "What do you mean they just left?" Trade Minister Jax Pulsar demanded, his bioluminescent spots flashing rapid patterns of disbelief. An entire species cannot simply leave. But they had. Earth and its colonies had packed up their quantum transmitters, shut down their embassies, and ghosted the entire Galactic Council faster than a Proximan sugar glider could snatch the last cookie from the break room. Not that I was bitter about that incident last week. The humans submitted their withdrawal notice precisely according to Article 7249, subsection Q, paragraph 3.14159 of the Galactic Charter, announced Protocol Droid TX-789, its voice carrying that insufferable tone of mechanical superiority. They followed all proper procedures, including filing their intent in triplicate, with notarized quantum signatures and temporal stamps. Security Chief Rax Prime, a towering mass of crystalline silicon life form, rumbled in what I recognized as their species' version of a snort. Of course they did. They knew exactly how to work our system, right until the moment they decided to break it. I couldn't help but chuckle, earning several disapproving looks from my fellow ambassadors. The humans had always been different. They asked questions no one else dared to ask, proposed solutions that made the Council's bureaucrats turn various shades of their species' respective colors of distress. Ambassador Knox. High Counselor Voss turned her attention to me, her scales now a deep indigo of concern. "You spent considerable time studying human culture. Please explain to the Council how we failed to anticipate this unprecedented act of species-wide insubordination." I straightened my posture, adjusting my ceremonial robe. "With all due respect, High Counselor, we did anticipate this. The humans told us exactly what they would do, multiple times, in multiple formats, including an entertaining presentation featuring something they called interpretive dance. The memory of human representative Amanda Blackwood performing a dramatic routine titled Bureaucracy Blues during last year's Galactic Cultural Exchange still brought a ripple of amusement through my chromatophores. They submitted 2,347 proposals for procedural reform. I continued, pulling up the data on my neural interface. My personal favorite was their suggestion to reduce the number of required forms for emergency aid from 57 to, and I quote, "any number that is not completely ridiculous." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Arcturian delegation began their species' traditional stress shedding, filling their section of the chamber with a fine mist of anxiety spores. But the filing system, protested Minister Pulsar. The procedures. The sacred bureaucratic traditions that have maintained peace for 10,000 years. Maintained peace, I clicked my mandibles, in what humans had taught me was a passable approximation of their sarcasm. Need I remind the Council of the Great Space Lane dispute of 2184, which took 47 years to resolve because the complaint forms were filed in the wrong shade of ultraviolet? The chamber erupted into chaos again. High Counselor Voss raised her gravity hammer, but this time, the quantum-stabilized podium had apparently had enough of our nonsense too. It flickered out of existence, leaving her hammering at empty space. As alarms blared and maintenance droids rushed to recalibrate the quantum matrices, I sat back and watched the show. The humans had warned us this day would come. They even put it on their official calendar as done with this noise day. We just never thought they would actually do it. Looking back, the breaking point came during what humans would call a Tuesday. Not that time has much meaning on a space station, but humans insisted on maintaining their calendars. They insisted on a lot of things, actually, like their right to innovate without filing 17 different permit applications in quantum-encoded holographic paper. I remember that day clearly, sitting in my usual spot in the council chamber, watching Amanda Blackwood march up to the central platform. She wore what humans called a power suit, though I never understood what made it powerful. No built-in weapons, no energy field generators, not even a basic personal shield. Just something they called pinstripes. Members of the council, she began, her voice carrying that particular tone humans used when they were done playing nice. I stand before you to present humanity's breakthrough in faster-than-light travel technology. The chamber's universal translators buzzed with activity as various species processed this announcement. High Counselor Voss's scales shifted to a cautionary yellow. Representative Blackwood Voss spoke with practiced diplomatic patience. The council has already established the approved methods of faster-than-light travel. The current system has functioned adequately for 3,000 years. Amanda smiled. Not the usual diplomatic smile we were used to, but something different. Something that made Security Chief Rax Prime's crystalline structure vibrate with unease. Adequately, she replied, pulling out what humans called a laser pointer, though why they still called it that when it used quantum entanglement to highlight things, I never understood. Let me show you the data from our latest tests. The holographic display lit up with numbers, charts, and something humans called memes, their peculiar way of conveying complex information through pictures of small Earth creatures with amusing captions. Our new drive system reduces travel time between galaxies by 87%, Amanda continued. It uses 42% less energy, produces zero quantum waste, and best of all, she paused for effect, it runs on coffee. The chamber erupted. The Arcturian delegation began stress shedding again, this time producing enough anxiety spores to trigger the emergency ventilation system. Preposterous, shouted Minister Pulsar. The laws of physics clearly state. The laws of physics, Amanda interrupted, raising an eyebrow in that uniquely human way. Or the laws of the Galactic Council's Physics Regulation Committee. I watched Trade Minister Buzz Stellar, another human representative, trying to suppress what they called a snicker. He had warned me this was coming during our weekly game of what humans called poker, a strange ritual involving cards, bluffing, and something called trail mix. High Counselor Voss raised her gravity hammer, which had been quantum recalibrated after the previous incident. Representative Blackwood, any new faster-than-light technology must undergo the standard approval process. This includes 300 years of testing, 7,000 safety inspections, and approval from all 57 subcommittees of the Department of Transportation Innovation Prevention. 300 years, Amanda's voice took on that dangerous, pleasant tone I had learned to recognize. Humanity went from horse-drawn carriages to landing on their moon in 66 years. We solved faster-than-light travel over a long weekend and several espresso machines. The Council's protocol droid Texas 789 began reciting the relevant regulations, its monotonous voice drilling into everyone's consciousness. According to Regulation 42B, subsection Theta, paragraph 9.9999999, all technological innovations must maintain the carefully balanced status quo established by the Great Convention of. That's when Amanda did something unprecedented. She pressed a button on her quantum pad, and the droid stopped mid-sentence. What did you do?" gasped Minister Pulsar, his bioluminescent spots now pulsing in panic mode. "Muted him," Amanda shrugged. "We also solved AI verbosity over that same weekend. Amazing what humans can do when they're properly caffeinated." The chamber fell silent. In 3,000 years of council history, no one had ever muted a protocol droid. The very idea was well, there wasn't even a regulation against it because no one had ever conceived it possible. This is exactly what we mean. High Counselor Voss's scales had turned a deep purple of diplomatic distress. Humanity continues to show a blatant disregard for proper procedures and established norms. Amanda straightened her power suit jacket. "You know what? You're right. We do disregard your procedures. Because while you're filling out forms about filling out forms, the universe is out there waiting to be explored." She turned to address the entire chamber. "Did you know humans have a saying? Red tape can strangle progress, though in this case, it's more like quantum encoded, bureaucratically approved, subcommittee-reviewed tape." That's when I noticed something odd. Throughout this entire presentation, Amanda had been sending subtle hand signals to other human representatives scattered throughout the chamber. I had learned enough about human body language to recognize this wasn't their usual animated way of talking. They were counting down. Therefore, Amanda's voice took on a formal tone, as per Article 7249, subsection Q, paragraph 3.14159, humanity hereby gives notice. The anxiety spores from the Arcturian delegation reached critical levels. That we're out. Peace, and with that very informal human farewell, she pressed another button on her quantum pad. Every human representative in the chamber simultaneously stood up, pulled out small devices, and vanished in a flash of what appeared to be coffee-scented quantum displacement. The last thing we heard was Amanda's voice, somehow broadcasting through the chamber's supposedly unhackable communication system. By the way, we solved quantum encryption too. Have fun with the paperwork. In the stunned silence that followed, I couldn't help but notice that my cup of human-supplied coffee was still warm, despite the laws of thermodynamics and 3 different council regulations stating it should have gone cold by now. Humanity hadn't just planned their exit, they had turned it into performance art. The next few weeks after humanity's departure were, to use their colorful phrase, a complete gong show. The council had never dealt with anything like this before. Usually, when species left the council, they did so after filling out the proper forms, attending the prescribed number of farewell ceremonies, and completing the traditional exchange of regretful quantum acknowledgments. But humans? They turned their exit into a galaxy-wide mic drop. The economic projections are troubling, announced Trade Minister Pulsar during our emergency session. His bioluminescent spots had been stuck on burnt orange for days, a clear sign of economic distress. Humanity's departure has created a 42% deficit in the galaxy's coffee supply alone. I watched various council members twitch at this news. Funny how many species had developed a dependency on that human beverage. Even the Hive Mind Collective had incorporated it into their neural network maintenance routine. Not to mention, continued Pulsar, his voice quavering, they took their entertainment networks with them. The Rigelian soap opera industry is in shambles without access to what humans called Netflix. A mournful keen rose from the Rigelian delegation. Their entire cultural economy had become dependent on remaking human shows with extra tentacles and quantum dynamics. High Councillor Voss's scales had been cycling through various shades of bureaucratic panic. Surely we can adapt. The council has survived for thousands of years without human innovation. I couldn't help but interject. Has it though? Do you remember what interstellar shipping was like before humans introduced their tracking system? We lost entire cargo fleets in quantum space because no one could figure out which form to file first. That's an exaggeration, protested Minister Pulsar, though his spots flickered uncertainly. Is it? I pulled up the records on my neural interface. The Great Quantum Mail Mishap of 2183. 6,000 ships full of priority packages got stuck in a bureaucratic loop between dimensions because the delivery confirmation forms had to be signed before the packages existed, but couldn't be processed until after they were delivered. Security Chief Rax Prime's crystalline form emanated frequencies of agreement. The humans fixed that with something they called common sense and a computer program they wrote during their lunch break. The chamber fell into uneasy silence as more reports flooded in. The Arcturian fashion conglomerate was in crisis because humans had taken their denim with them. The Proximate Academy of Sciences was struggling because their quantum physics department had relied heavily on human graduate students who asked what they called stupid questions that somehow led to brilliant breakthroughs. It gets worse, announced a junior aide, rushing into the chamber with a quantum tablet. The humans didn't just leave, they took their section of the quantum internet with them. All their cat videos are gone. This news hit harder than the coffee shortage. Even the protocol droids, usually immune to emotional displays, slumped in their stations. I decided to add fuel to the fire. And has anyone checked on the council's budget management system? The one humans redesigned 2 years ago because our previous one took 7 quantum supercomputers just to calculate lunch expenses. The resulting panic sent 3 different species into their respective forms of stress response. The Arcturians began shed storming again, the Rigelians started stress molting, and the crystalline silicon beings began humming at frequencies that made everyone's teeth vibrate, assuming they had teeth. High Councillor Voss tried to restore order by banging her gravity hammer, but the quantum-stabilized podium had developed what humans would call an attitude problem. It kept phase shifting just before the hammer could make contact, making Voss look like she was playing an extremely dignified game of whack-a-mole. We must maintain order, she declared, giving up on the hammer and resort to old-fashioned shouting. The council has procedures for everything. There must be a procedure for this. Actually, I noted, checking my records, there isn't. Humanity wrote most of our crisis management procedures. They called it their What Could Possibly Go Wrong initiative, and apparently they took the manual with them. The chaos in the chamber reached new heights. The hive mind collective accidentally connected to the coffee machine's quantum processor, causing it to achieve brief sentience and declare its intention to unionize. 3 different trade agreements spontaneously quantum degenerated because they had been written in what humans called Microsoft Excel, which they had somehow made essential to the functioning of the galactic economy. I sat back in my chair, watching the pandemonium unfold. My sensory tentacles picked up fascinating patterns of panic and confusion swirling through the chamber. As a xenoanthropologist specializing in human behavior, I couldn't help but admire the elegance of it all. You know what the real problem is, I announced, causing nearby delegates to turn their various sensory organs in my direction. We never understood humans. We thought they were adapting to our system, but they were actually rewiring it from the inside out. Preposterous, declared Minister Pulsar, though his spots had shifted to the pale yellow of uncertainty. Our system is perfect, unchanged for thousands of years. Exactly, I responded, feeling what humans called a dramatic moment coming on. When was the last time any of you read the actual regulations? The ones we use every day? Blank stares met my question. Even the protocol droids looked uncomfortable. I continued. Last week, and do you know what I found? Little changes, subtle tweaks that humans had been slipping into our bureaucracy for years. They turned our rigid quantum regulatory framework into something that actually works. But the forms protested someone from the back. The procedures. The sacred traditions. Oh, those are still there, I assured them. Humans just added what they called shortcuts. Efficient workarounds. Did you know there's now an actual procedure for bypassing unnecessary procedures? It's in Appendix Z right after the section on quantum coffee break regulations. The chamber erupted into fresh chaos as officials frantically began checking their regulations. The hive mind collective, still partially connected to the coffee machine, began spewing error messages in binary and brewing espresso at random intervals. High Counselor Voss's scales had turned a color I'd never seen before, a sort of bureaucratic mauve tinged with existential dread. Are you suggesting, she asked slowly, that humans have been optimizing us? Worse, I replied, feeling a very human-like grin spread across my facial appendages. They made us efficient. And now they're gone, taking their efficiency with them, leaving us with a system that's been thoroughly humansed up, but without the humans to run it. The reality of our situation finally sank in. We hadn't just lost a member species. We'd lost the species that had quietly become the galaxy's tech support, innovation department, and chaos control system all rolled into one. In the ensuing silence, broken only by the occasional existential whimper and the now sentient coffee machine's attempts to start a labor movement, I couldn't help but wonder what humanity's next move would be. Because if there's one thing I'd learned about humans, it's that they never did anything without a plan. Usually several plans, often contradictory ones, sometimes involving explosions. The truth about humanity's activities came to light during what should have been a routine quantum telescope maintenance schedule review meeting. Yes, we had meetings to review maintenance schedules. Yes, this is why humans left. Pax Luminar, our lead quantum astronomer, burst into the council chamber without filing the required entry in a state of emergency forms. Their luminescent fur was bristling with what I recognized as scientific excitement, making them look like a glowing dandelion having an existential crisis. You need to see this, they announced, bypassing 7 layers of protocol and causing 3 protocol droids to short-circuit simultaneously. The humans, they have been building things. High Counselor Voss, who had finally given up on the quantum podium and switched to a traditional space wood lectern, looked up with weary scales. Building things is not news, Scientist Luminar. Humans are always building things, usually without permits. No, Pax bounced on their gravitational support field. Big things. Space things. Really big space things. They activated the chamber's holographic display, causing it to flicker and display an error message about updating its quantum drivers. After 3 reboots and a stern talking to from technical support, the display finally showed us what had gotten Pax so excited. The chamber fell silent. Even the newly unionized coffee machine stopped its regular demands for better working conditions. That PAX announced with professional scientific glee is a Dyson sphere. Well, the beginning of one, around a star that was specifically not allocated for construction by the Council's Department of Stellar Development. Minister Pulsar's spots turned pure white, but that's impossible. The paperwork alone for stellar construction takes at least 7 centuries to process. Oh, it gets better, PAX continued, their fur now glowing bright enough to trigger the chamber's solar protection shields. Look at this. The display shifted to show what appeared to be massive structures throughout what we had thought was empty space. Gates of some kind connected by lines of energy that definitely weren't approved by the Department of Quantum Infrastructure. They've built their own transportation network, PAX explained, practically vibrating with scientific enthusiasm. No wonder they weren't concerned about our faster-than-light travel regulations. They have not been using conventional space travel for months. Security Chief Rax Prime's crystalline form emitted frequencies of alarm. Are you saying they constructed an independent galaxy-spanning transportation system without filing a single environmental impact assessment? Not even a preliminary space zoning request, PAX confirmed gleefully. And these energy readings suggest they are using something that looks suspiciously like controlled quantum coffee reactions. The Arcturian delegation immediately began stress shedding, but their anxiety spores were vaporized by the sudden burst of energy from Trade Minister Pulsar's panic-induced bioluminescence. They weaponized coffee. The trade minister's voice hit frequencies previously achievable only by quantum harmonics. Not weaponized, I corrected, my xenoanthropology training kicking in. Humans never saw coffee as a weapon. They saw it as fuel. The difference is important and terrifying. PAX continued their presentation, each new revelation causing fresh waves of bureaucratic panic through the council. Quantum manufacturing facilities that ignored all standard safety regulations except the ones that actually mattered. Research stations studying phenomena that the council had officially classified as too interesting to investigate, and most shocking of all. They fixed the quantum internet buffering issues, PAX announced. No more waiting for cat videos to load. This revelation caused the Hive Mind Collective to briefly achieve a higher state of consciousness, though they quickly returned to normal when they realized this meant filing transcendence paperwork. But how demanded High Counselor Voss? How did we not notice all this construction? I cleared my throat, causing my sensory tentacles to ripple in what humans had taught me was a suitably dramatic way. Actually, they filed all the proper notices. They just did it through the council's suggestion box system. We have a suggestion box system, several delegates asked simultaneously. Exactly, I replied. Humanity found the one part of our bureaucracy so buried in regulations that not even we checked it anymore. They filed everything as suggestions for future infrastructure improvement projects. Technically, since no one ever responded with a rejection. All their projects were automatically approved after the standard waiting period of 3 quantum minutes. 3 minutes. Minister Pulsar's spots were now cycling through colors not previously known to exist. The standard waiting period is 3 centuries. Someone changed it last year, I explained. The amendment was filed under Quantum Regulatory Optimization Form 32B, subsection Epsilon, commonly known as the "nobody actually reads these anyway" clause. The chamber erupted into chaos again. The protocol droids began citing regulations at random, their quantum processors unable to handle the paradox of humans following rules by not following rules. The Arcturian delegation's stress shedding reached such intensity that their section of the chamber now technically qualified as a new environmental biome. PAX, still glowing with scientific excitement, continued their presentation. And here is the most fascinating part. These energy readings suggest they have somehow achieved quantum entanglement with fun. Fun is not a quantifiable scientific property, protested Minister Pulsar. It is now, PAX replied cheerfully. Humans wrote a proof. They submitted it to the Galactic Scientific Journal under the title "Hold My Coffee and Watch This: A Practical Application of Recreational Quantum Mechanics." I watched as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just left the council, they had graduated from it. While we were busy maintaining our carefully regulated status quo, they had been quietly building their own future, one unauthorized quantum coffee reaction at a time. This is unprecedented, declared High Counselor Voss, her scales now displaying patterns that suggested her pigmentation system had encountered a critical error. We must form a committee to study these developments, several committees, with subcommittees, and working groups to coordinate between the committees. I don't think we have time for that, I said, pointing to PAX's latest data stream. According to these readings, humanity's development is proceeding at what they would call ludicrous speed. The display showed new construction appearing in real time, spreading across the galaxy like quantum kudzu. Human innovation, freed from the constraints of council regulations, was experiencing the equivalent of a caffeine-powered growth spurt. Fear rippled through the chamber as the council species faced something entirely outside their experience: progress without paperwork, innovation without inhibition, development without decades of debate. In the terrified silence that followed, the unionized coffee machine chose this moment to demand a 4-dimensional break room and better quantum benefits package. Nobody even tried to fill out a form to stop it. The next few months in the Galactic Council reminded me of what humans called a game show, specifically, one of those shows where contestants made hilarious mistakes while an audience laughed at their misfortune. Except in this case, the contestants were entire civilizations, and the prize was not falling hopelessly behind humanity's rapid advancement. The Regellians were the first to attempt breaking free from council regulations. They announced their intention to speed up their approval processes by introducing something they called quantum rubber stamps. Behold, announced the Regellian chief of innovation, holding up a device that looked suspiciously like a human stapler painted with glow-in-the-dark quantum paint. With this, we will approve projects instantly. The device promptly achieved sentience, declared itself a sovereign entity, and began demanding citizenship rights. Last I heard, it had filed for political asylum in the human territories, citing cruel and unusual bureaucracy. The Arcturians tried a different approach. They attempted to replicate humanity's success by creating their own version of coffee. The resulting beverage, which they named Quantum Sino, had the unexpected side effect of causing temporal hiccups. The good news, reported the head of the Arcturian Science Division, while temporarily existing in 3 different time zones, is that we have successfully reduced project approval times to -7 years. And the bad news, asked High Counselor Voss, her scales shifting to preemptive disappointment purple. All our approved projects now technically took place in the past, which means they require retroactive permits, which can only be issued in the future, which is now the past, which the scientists' explanation was cut short, as they accidentally bureaucracied themselves out of existence. Even the hive mind collective got in on the action. They attempted to streamline their decision-making process by creating what they called a quantum consensus accelerator. The theory was sound. By quantumly entangling all their neural nodes, they could reach agreements faster than their standard process of arguing with themselves for several decades. The result was what humans would have called a spectacular backfire. The collective achieved such rapid consensus that they agreed to disagree with their own agreement, creating a paradox that caused their entire governmental system to blue screen. "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" suggested a junior protocol droid, before being immediately promoted to head of it, crisis management. Security Chief Rax Prime's species attempted to revolutionize their crystal-based technology by introducing what they called quantum jazz, a fusion of crystalline computing and what they understood to be human spontaneity. The resulting system worked perfectly, but refused to do anything until it was provided with a proper musical accompaniment and a spotlight. "The quantum processors are demanding a 3-hour solo," reported a frustrated Rax Prime, "and something called a rider for their green room." I watched all this from my usual spot in the council chamber, which had become something of a front-row seat to the galaxy's most expensive comedy show. My sensory tentacles were getting quite a workout from all the face-palming, a human gesture I had found increasingly useful. Trade Minister Pulsar's latest attempt at innovation was particularly entertaining. The Luminary Commerce Initiative, designed to revolutionize galactic trade, ended up creating a self-aware stock market that began trading itself. "The quantum algorithms have formed a union," Pulsar reported, his bioluminescent spots displaying patterns that looked suspiciously like human emojis. "They are demanding better working conditions and something called casual Fridays." The unionized coffee machine, seeing an opportunity, immediately offered to represent the algorithms in their labor negotiations. Meanwhile, the protocol droids, not to be outdone, attempted to upgrade themselves with what they called quantum intuition processors. The result was a galaxy-wide existential crisis as thousands of protocol droids simultaneously realized the absurdity of their existence and began writing poetry about it. Why do we process droned one particularly affected unit? What is the meaning of forms? Are we not all just quantum particles filling out the paperwork of existence? The chamber's maintenance staff had to install quantum tissue dispensers to deal with all the mechanical tears. High Counselor Voss watched all this with increasing despair, her scales cycling through so many colors of bureaucratic distress that she briefly became a tourist attraction. There must be a way to replicate humanity's success, she declared during one particularly chaotic session. We are the Galactic Council. We have governed space for thousands of years. Yes, I pointed out, by doing everything exactly the same way for thousands of years. Humans call that being stuck in a rut. But we are trying to change, protested Minister Pulsar. Look at all our innovation initiatives. As if on cue, an alarm blared through the chamber. The Proximan delegation's attempt at creating a quantum efficiency engine had somehow achieved peak efficiency by doing absolutely nothing, proving that the ultimate form of bureaucratic optimization was the complete absence of bureaucracy. That's exactly the problem, I explained, watching as emergency crews attempted to contain an outbreak of spontaneous quantum irony. Everyone is trying to copy humanity's results without understanding their methods. Humans didn't succeed because they had better technology or smarter scientists. Then why did they succeed? Asked Pax Luminar, their fur glowing with genuine curiosity. Because they never accepted that something was impossible just because a form said so, I replied. They didn't try to work within the system, they questioned why the system existed in the first place. The chamber fell silent as this truth sank in. Well, mostly silent. The quantum poetry slam being held by the existentially aware protocol droids was getting quite passionate. Are you suggesting, High Counselor Voss asked slowly, that the secret to human innovation is not following the rules? No, I corrected. The secret is knowing which rules matter and which ones are just rules for the sake of having rules. Humans call it common sense. The blank stares I received suggested this concept was more alien than anything the Council had encountered in its thousands of years of existence. In the background, the unionized coffee machine and the sentient quantum rubber stamp began organizing a protest march for artificial rights. The quantum stock market algorithms joined in, crashing the economy in perfect rhythm to the crystalline computer's jazz quartet. The message arrived during another emergency council session about the latest failed attempt to replicate human innovation. The Hive Mind Collective had just finished presenting their report on accidentally teaching quantum mathematics to a colony of space bacteria, when my neural interface pinged with an unauthorized notification. Ambassador Knox, the message read. Fancy a coffee? No forms required. Bring friends if they can handle fun. Coordinates attached. Amanda. I nearly fell out of my gravity chair. The coordinates pointed to one of humanity's new quantum gate stations, the ones that supposedly ran on coffee and optimism. Order. Order, High Counselor Voss was shouting, her scales flickering between bureaucratic panic and institutional outrage. The Council demands to know why these unauthorized messages are being received. Similar notifications had apparently reached several other delegates. Pax Luminar's fur was glowing like a quantum disco, and even Security Chief Rax Prime's crystalline form was vibrating with what appeared to be excitement. This is clearly a violation of Council Communication Protocol 7249B, declared Minister Pulsar, though his bioluminescent spots were forming patterns that looked suspiciously like smiley faces. The protocol droids, still in their poetry phase, began composing sonnets about the quantum nature of invitation etiquette. We must form a committee to study these communications, High Counselor Voss announced. Several committees, with subcommittees to study the committees studying the communications. I stood up, causing my sensory tentacles to wave in what humans would call a dramatic fashion. With respect, High Counselor, I believe that would be missing the point. Again. Missing what point? She demanded, her scales shifting to a shade of purple I had come to associate with impending bureaucratic meltdown. The humans are not asking for permission, I explained. They are offering an opportunity to individuals, not institutions. The chamber erupted into chaos. The Arcturians began stress shedding so intensely that their section of the chamber qualified as a weather system. The quantum stock market algorithms, sensing opportunity, began trading futures in anxiety spores. But the procedures sputtered Minister Pulsar. The protocols. The 17 different forms required for unofficial official contact. That is exactly why some of us got invitations, and others did not, I said, watching realization dawn across various alien faces. The humans are reaching out to those of us who saw their point all along. The unionized coffee machine chose this moment to announce it had received an invitation too, and was considering a career change to become a quantum barista. High Counselor Voss's scales had turned a color that suggested her pigmentation system was considering a rage quit. This is unacceptable. The Council cannot allow individual species to engage in unauthorized innovation. I do not think, I replied carefully, that the Council is in a position to allow or disallow anything anymore. To demonstrate my point, I pulled up the latest quantum telescope data. The display showed humanity's network of gates and stations had expanded even further, creating what looked like an intricate web of possibilities through space. And at certain points along this network, other construction projects had begun, projects that bore signatures of non-human origin. Some species, I announced, have already accepted their invitations. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Even the existentially aware protocol droids stopped their poetry slam. Ambassador Knox, High Counselor Voss's voice carried the weight of thousands of years of tradition. Surely you are not suggesting we abandon our sacred procedures. I looked around the chamber, at faces and sensory organs turned toward me in various expressions of hope, fear, and bureaucratic constipation. I am suggesting, I said, that perhaps it is time for the Council to have a coffee break, a real one, without filing the paperwork first. My neural interface pinged again. Another message from Amanda. PS, we figured out that faster-than-light thing. Turns out the answer was in the quantum foam of the coffee all along. Who knew? I made my decision. Standing up, I addressed the chamber one last time. High Counselor, honored delegates, sentient algorithms, and recently unionized appliances, I hereby tender my resignation from my position as ambassador of the Zentaran Coalition to the Galactic Council. I paused for dramatic effect, something I had learned from watching human entertainment broadcasts. I am going to get coffee with the humans, real coffee. The kind that violates at least 15 different quantum physics regulations and probably makes the universe question its own existence. The chamber erupted into fresh chaos. The Arcturian delegation's stress shedding reached such intensity that it began forming small quantum singularities. The unionized coffee machine announced it was going on strike in solidarity, but nobody noticed because it had already left to pursue its quantum barista dreams. As I walked toward the chamber's exit, I heard footsteps behind me. Turning, I saw Pax Luminar, their fur glowing with determination, and Security Chief Rax Prime, their crystalline form resonating with what humans would call the tune of freedom. Wait, called Minister Pulsar, his spots forming question marks. What should we tell the Council? I smiled in my best approximation of human cheekiness. Tell them we will be back. Probably, eventually, after coffee. Behind us, High Counselor Voss began the process of forming an emergency committee to study the implications of unauthorized caffeination. But for the first time in my diplomatic career, I found that I did not care about the proper procedures. Sometimes, as humans say, you just have to go with the quantum flow. 6 months after my dramatic exit from the council chamber, I found myself sitting in what humans called a coffee shop, floating in space near one of their quantum gates. The view was spectacular, the coffee was legally questionable, and the bureaucracy was refreshingly absent. So Amanda said, sliding into the seat across from me, her quantum pad displaying various construction projects across the galaxy, how does it feel to be on the fun side of progress? My sensory tentacles rippled with contentment as I sipped my quantum mocha. Like being part of something that actually makes sense, though I do miss the poetry writing protocol droids sometimes. Oh, them, Amanda grinned. They started a really successful spoken word night at the Quantum Jazz Club. The crystalline computers provide backup music. Through the shop's window, I could see the latest human innovation project taking shape, a massive structure that supposedly bent probability itself. The council had sent 17 strongly worded letters about it, all of which had been used by the quantum coffee machine to make specially flavored beverages. The council finally accepted reality, I reported, checking my neural interface. They created a new department, the Committee for Accepting Things We Cannot Control but Must Pretend to Regulate Anyway. Amanda laughed. Let me guess, CAT-WCPR for short. Actually, they spent 3 weeks arguing about the acronym and settled on Bob. The door chimed as Pax Luminar entered, their fur glowing with the excitement of their latest research project. Behind them, Security Chief Rax Prime's crystalline form sparkled with quantum calculations. You will not believe what we discovered, Pax announced. Apparently, if you add quantum coffee to the experimental probability matrix, it creates a field of infinite possibilities. Also, a really good cappuccino. The unionized coffee machine, now a respected quantum barista and part-time philosophy teacher, beeped in approval. Looking around at this unlikely gathering, humans, aliens and sentient appliances all working together without filing a single form, I couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The council had spent thousands of years trying to maintain order in the galaxy through regulations and procedures. But it took humanity saying nah to remind us all that the universe was meant to be explored, not regulated. Oh, by the way, Amanda added, checking her quantum pad, the council just sent another protest about our latest project. Something about it violating the laws of physics. What did you do with the complaint, I asked, already grinning. Ran it through the quantum coffee maker. It makes an excellent hazelnut blend. As we sat there, watching the galaxy reshape itself one coffee-powered innovation at a time, I realized that sometimes the best way to deal with bureaucracy was to toast it, preferably with a quantum espresso and a side of impossible dreams. The universe, it turned out, had a sense of humor after all. It just needed humanity to remind it of the punchline.